You are guaranteed to empathize and dream with the author and characters who reach for you in waves of lightheartedness, unearthing passionate connections and loss. Available at tatepublishing.com.
Again.
Welcome back to Morning Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us as we keep you informed and entertained. Our next guest is an entrepreneur and a new author. She just recently released her book in August of this year called Dimensions of a Woman. We'd like to welcome with us to the hot seat Stacy-Ann Duhaney.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, my dear.
Morning, Prime morning.
Yes,
Good
you know,
morning.
I'm a stickler for the artwork and all this stuff. So as soon as I saw it, I said, let me just zoom in. And this book spoke to me without me even reading it. So you see, she looks like she's in pain. She looks like she wants to tell something. What can I get from this book besides seeing the picture
And
of
of course, you have to show.
Yes.
Right. Dimensions of a Woman is an exploratory piece. It looks at woman from a purely emotional perspective, and that's because it's leading up to a second book. So it looks at woman in love, woman in pain and silence, woman in fear, etc.
The first sense of being.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You actually get that. Well, I hear a Jamaican accent inside of there, and I've made a mention of Signal the Plane. And she's like, oh, that's a Jamaican too. So she took it with her. And I know you all are very like sticklers for sayings from what you believe in and all this stuff. How is the transition from being in Jamaica to being now in Trinidad over the past few years?
The transition has actually been quite wonderful. It was a little difficult for me when I just came here because I didn't come here from Jamaica. I actually came here from the UK. And so Trinidad for me seemed a little slow, you know, everything. But when I settled in, the Caribbean flavor and the vibe is there as in Jamaica, so it was quite easy for me. I really have a great church home, Faith, Hope and Love. Hi. And so, I mean, they've welcomed me with open arms. So they're like my family away from home. So I mean, it's been great. We've settled into the culture and the country. So it's been
How long have you been writing?
I've been writing since high school, really, but I've never taken it seriously. I was always a closet poet, so I would write but not share my work.
So this is a compilation of all your work from all these years?
This is actually a compilation of work since 2011, and then 2013 came, and I don't know. Well, I can't say I don't know what happened. That was a time I think I was discovering self and Christ, and you know, it has helped me in terms of just opening up and owning who I am, and so you know, the book came.
So when I really think of what you were saying and what is really pushing forward from this book, because when you go through it, it's a compilation of short poetry in its own sense.
Right.
Like, why poems and not like a full scripted book to really, because there are so many parts of a woman, and you wouldn't really just get it from a poem. Do you think you have accomplished that through just poetic style of writing?
I'd like to differ. I'd like to differ.
I
think I'm going to jump in because that's what Morning Prime is about. I'd beg to differ because with poetry, the short pieces really give the dimensions as opposed to a story where it has to have the beginning, the middle, and the end. So now I would like you to, with the same question, go in depth as to what you got out of the dimensions in comparison to the
full write-up.
Yeah. Right. Poetry allows you to not be boxed in. So when you write a full story, you're given detail by detail by detail. Now, I didn't want this book to just be about me. Dimensions of a Woman is a woman's dimension if you look at Stacy as an individual, but it's also dimensions of you, dimensions of my lady sitting at the end. So in writing the poetry, I have a piece in it called Night, and it looks at the perspective of a prostitute. Now, I've never experienced that, but I think there are a lot of people who have experienced it, and it's her voice. And there's Woman and Her Music, who looks at a woman in her 50s who is looking at her life in regret, etc. So you could call my poetry mini stories if you'd like.
All right, so, I didn't want to take the lead, but where you getting this book? Because I just think it's important, because at the end of the day, as you say, a lot of people never experience or know what is the prostitution side and this and that side. And sometimes you really want, besides just watching a movie, you want to read it in a book.
Right.
And getting a short little scenarios, synopsis from it. Where can we get this? How much? Give us the insight, the details on the book.
It's on Amazon.com, and the cost is $12.99.
US?
US.
Yeah.
On October 10th, we'll be having a book launch at Hotel Normandy, and we'll have books available for sale. Also, the book specialist has agreed to carry our books, so it should be there by the end of the month. But now you could get it on Amazon if you wanted it, like next week.
Now, expression is always cathartic in some kind of way. How do you hope to inspire women with this book? Because there are many different stories that women can identify, or people in general can identify with. But this is, this is dimensions of a woman. How do you hope to inspire your reading audience?
I'm hoping when women read the book that they will actually think of themselves in the picture, and then they will see woman growing. Now, at the end of the book, it has woman's last lament, and there is a special piece in it actually about me. And it was when I think I finally just submitted and embraced my Christianity, because I've always been, I don't want to say a 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but you're Christian and you have an idea of how a Christian should be. But then I found that, God made us to just be beautiful, and we should be in His image, but from a heart perspective, as opposed to what you look like, what you wear, and even what you bring to the table, what you've experienced, what He's forgiven, etc. So I'm hoping that a woman will take up the book, she will read it, there will be a story that she can identify with, and then she will see that woman has come to a place where she understands that, I'm nothing without Christ. And then that woman will want to see what comes in the second book of poetry, which is called Quiet Dimensions, which is where a woman actually sits in silence and gets to know Christ a little better, etc., etc. So it's leading up to something.
I love about poetry because last night I did poetry. I did 2 pieces of the spoken word at the Culture House, put on something at the conference center at Erie. What I like, Athalia, about poetry, and all my sisters on the couch, is that unlike a book where you think you got the book in the first read, but you missed out on so much, and you got to reread. With poetry, you get to read that as many times, depending on the length of the poem. So the digestion is a little more easier to digest, and it's a little more profound, and it provokes thought. Where did you start? Because today I said it's Where Do I Start Wednesday. Where did you start with the inkling of putting down your thoughts, your profound thoughts, penning them?
And this is a very honest moment. When I started, you asked me how I felt, being in Trinidad, etc. When I moved to Trinidad, I had moved to Trinidad from a first world country, and I sort of said, I chose to come to Trinidad based on love, and I'm not sure that this is where I want to be. And then, I started my own business, and I went through a lot of trials and struggle and debt, and everything just seemed to be crumbling. And I was thinking, but I don't understand God, why is this happening? I'm always just this straight arrow, very professional, very organized. I achieve. I don't feel like I'm achieving now, And then I started thinking about it, and I thought about how I have grown. I mean, even coming from my own background, because I grew up really poor, in what you would call one of those inner city community, if you wish. And I think during that time, I had lost sight of where God had taken me from. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, but there have been so many changes in my life, even as a woman. And then, I got the inkling for the book, Dimensions of a Woman, which signal that woman's parts of a woman. And I started making my notes, and going into 2011, I looked at these poetry and I'm like, but I don't know if anybody would want to read them, or, so I had them.
That's why I had them to get the book.
So I had them kind kind of stashed away. And then in 2013, I actually finally shared them with someone, you know. And the person read them and said, you know, you should share these, Stacy. And then I did a blog, and I did a website, and I submitted my poetry online, and I realized people were actually commenting on it. I said, you know, I could possibly actually do this, you know.
So that was a way to sort of test the waters.
Test the waters and so on, you know. And I started writing because before I'm sappy, very sappy, so I would always write just love poetry. So every time you open something that I've written, it would talk about love, and I love thee.
A Taste of Dark, I think, is in your book.
Is it right?
That was very.
And
Thank you.
How many poems can we find in this book?
It's 80-something poems.
Oh, right. And you took like about 3 years to get all these together?
I finished, less than. Maybe about, well, it's been in the making since 2011, but I would want to say I started seriously writing it in 2013. And I finished last year and got the offer to publish last year, but I just wasn't ready. Like inside I wasn't ready, but apart from that came quiet, because when I started, it was supposed to be one book. And I think in my own silent journey at home, Quiet Dimensions came out of nowhere, and I spent a lot of time with self. People need to spend a lot of time with their selves in their head. Sure. It's a hard place to be, but I think that is where you really do find God, because at the time you start to question.
In your heart as well?
Yes, and in your heart, both, you know, because they sort of work in tandem with each other. And I spent a lot of quiet time, and then I watched my writing change, and I was like, my writing is changing. Quiet Dimensions is nothing, and I'm halfway into that book, the second book, and it's nothing like the first one. And so it shows that change, you know, that gradual change in a woman. For you? I'm not having it, and I have to. I'm gonna say something.
I actually faced mine, and it's going on for like 2 years now. I swear. I don't know what's happening.
I mean, I have to be really honest, and I'm gonna say something that might sound really corny to some people, but I'm telling you, it must be the Holy Spirit in my second book, because it's just flowing, and I know it's not from me, you know. It's not from me, and it's a wonderful place to be, because I have to get excited about it, because I think I've come face to face with Jesus, and I love it.
Well, let me tell you from now, in no time like God's time, because when you were writing this, you felt like, you know, a slow pace was coming, and it was good. It was a pull and a turn. And probably the push for you was actually to start.
Yes.
And it felt like it wasn't the time, but actually it was that time that God was saying, you know what, you should really just write. And you took the stance, you went online, social media. Helps a lot. You know, and then and there you have what you may have, you know, helped a lot of women understand, even just not themselves, but what another woman is going through or how they feel. So, you know, so it's all about
all women have the same experiences.
Yes.
What about children, Stacy-Ann? Do you have kids?
I do. I have a son. He just turned 8 in August. I used to call him my 7-year-old wonder. There's a poem in my book about him. So I can't call him my 7-year-old wonder anymore. So I guess he's now my 8-year-old wonder.
So just letting you all guys, she's married, so don't message me.
Yes, I am. And what about inspiration? I mean, you have so many different, you know, types of poems in there. Of course, I also want to get into your writing style, because, you know, we have different types of poems. We have the sonnets, we have the ones that rhyme, the ones that don't. What's your writing style and your inspirations?
My inspiration, I would want to say life in general, people. There is a poem there that is inspired by Karen Washington, and I don't know if you know who she is, but she's from the US, and she started a blog online. She was motivating women to be happy in their skin color, etc. And then afterwards, she committed suicide. So the poem, and it was about how online everyone thought she had great confidence, you know, and her self-esteem was up there because she was building other people up. But she had lost her mom, and, you know, she took it to heart and committed suicide. And so that poem is about suicide, and it's about how she would have felt or might have felt, because I think when people are at that place where they think about taking their life, they go through that stage in their head where they feel no one loves them, you know, and so it's from that perspective. So they don't think about life how we do, you know. There's no reason to stay on here because it's not worth it.
What I want to get to you with, sorry Zoe, what I want to get to you with, because of course you spoke about dimensions of a woman, and a lot of the time people would think, you know, women are always the vulnerable ones and whatever. What about actually writing on a man's perspective? Because I can tell you, I know some of y'all are there. You know, go through that
Can't you really
time.
speak from a man's perspective?
Yeah, you know, I think no. You have a husband? Come on. Yeah, I mean, the inspiration from even getting from your 7-year wonder, you know, you could actually start there. So I don't know if any at that time you could actually get inspired from any of those two to sit and say, let me write something, even though it's a woman's book. Let me see if I can write something on a man's perspective in this woman's book, so they could also get a dab of, you know, how a wife feels with a husband or so, something like that.
Well, I don't know if I wrote it from a man's perspective, but I tell you, this book, it is dimensions. It has poetry for everyone. So there is a poem called Missionary Slave. My church, please forgive me.
Missionary slave.
Missionary Slave. And it's a look at, because I think there are also women, yes, you open a can of worms. So there is a poem about women who make love but actually feel like, you know, you know, the man rolls over, he turns his back and he starts to snore, kind of a thing. So there is a poem in it about that. There's also poem, Freedom Hides. It looks at a woman breaking into a male-dominated society, you know, meeting people, but partly hiding a part of herself. So you stay below the radar, you accomplish just enough.
How do you come up with the names?
You try not to, you try not to step on too many toes. So from that perspective, and then I did share my book with men as well. So I got my male friends and my husband to read it. So they did give me their perspective, and they actually think it's quite good. So I mean, so men, you can go out and get it for your wives. Bear in mind that there is a second book, so if it's a little touchy, know that we are taking women, or I am taking a woman to a place where, you know, she is what she was created to be, you know, whole.
Stacy-Ann, you're multifaceted, and of course the second book would just kind of prove that. Congratulations on your first published book of poems, Dimensions of a Woman, A First Sense of Being. Check it out on Amazon, and of course don't forget on October 8th, you said, the launch?
October 10th.
At Normandy?
Yes.
All right, we'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy-Ann. Congratulations again.
Indeed.
We'll be right back right here on Morning Prime.
Thank you.
You know what? I need to get this book. Like,